Hey folks, before we get started with today's session, wanted to give you a heads up that for the next installment of Machete Order, we will be recommending 2 episodes that contain sexual violence some viewers may prefer not to watch. The first is Employee of the Month, Season 3, Episode 4. The scene begins at minute 18 when Dr. Melfi is walking into the parking garage and ends at minute 19:35. The second instance occurs in University, Season 3, Episode 6. It begins at minute 37:45 when Ralphie confronts Tracee outside the Bada Bing parking lot and ends at minute 40. Although both scenes contain plot points that are important for the storylines we'll be discussing on the podcast, they are not necessary to watch to understand the context. As always, thank you for your support. And now, on to the show. I love that we're now like live video recording and it's the hottest day of the year. And I had to walk here and I'm like
just
schwitzing.
SJ looked so rough walking in. He was so sweaty and just looking sad.
So warm. It's only May. All right. Well, that's global warming for you.
Wait, I'm looking on your notes. Less impressions? I like the impressions.
I very much did not like my impressions.
Ross, what did you think?
What did you give us? Was it the Gabagool?
Oh, I had so many impressions in the last episode. I feel like I should apologize to the viewers for how many impressions I gave, and I didn't think any of them were particularly good.
You can make up for it in this episode by doing better impressions.
Well, this could also be a whole bit about SG's bad impressions. And what's our top 10 or
You're going to
5?
have a whole reel of them just from episode 3 or session 3.
Have you seen that thing where Amy Poehler can't do impressions on Parks and Rec and they just keep making her do different accents that she just can't do?
No.
And hold on, there's like a whole reel on
It's a
YouTube.
little lady. My fragile constitution cannot handle the fearsome outdoors.
I have no problem with strong women, Leslie.
Who's Leslie? My name is Annabelle Vandergraff.
I have read that you can really train yourself on impressions, though. So there's hope for you yet.
Thank you.
It's not necessarily nature. You can nurture your way into this if you would like.
I'm gonna practice it. I mean, we have the opportunity now.
You can use this soapbox that we're on to do your impressions or practice your impressions.
Get feedback. Welcome to Machete Order, a podcast about the best TV shows of all time, or at least some of them. I'm SJ Pederuti.
I'm Maxine Philivong. Each season, we're joined by a special guest host,
2 of us will have seen the show before.
and one hasn't.
This season, we're talking about The Sopranos.
There's a Zuni saying, for every 20 wrongs a child does, ignore 19.
There's an old Italian saying, you fuck up once, you lose 2 teeth.
Let's get going. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a second.
Well, they don't know that.
No, sounds like it's just been a week.
Yeah.
But the important distinction now is that there is a they, and getting feedback from our many, many dozens of listeners.
Yeah, the listener count has been so overwhelming. We've just been working through emails and calls. It's kind of crazy. I don't know about you guys, but
I got a lot of flack.
I've even gotten through 50% of them.
No, I got a lot of flack for not knowing what gabagool was. There were a lot of angry family members that texted me and called me and shamed me.
No one shamed me for my last episode or the last few episodes, and I think it's because they could tell that I was vulnerable.
I don't know. You got
So.
high marks with my crew.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me any of that. You just let me.
They like you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. They think you have a very professional voice.
I agree. Got some good stuff on Maxine. SJ, a little less.
Yeah, that's to be expected.
Just kidding. Voice of the gods. That's what I've heard.
I've also heard that we need to get Ross a better microphone. So you're going without the headphones today.
No headphones, but I have the nasal drip COVID symptoms still.
That's right.
Still
That's
right.
right.
Oh, no, you got COVID?
Yeah, people still do that.
Cataracts. Yeah.
How was it?
Oh, it was great. Yeah.
Was this
Good
your
time.
first, second, third?
Third time.
How did it compare to the first 2?
Pretty rough. I'm still feeling it right now. Yeah.
I feel like it's like
I-
asking somebody how like the third installment of a movie was. Like, how did it compare to the first 2? Was it worse? Was it better? I mean,
Well, I haven't really kept up on my boosters.
Yeah.
So, I don't even really know what's going on with the boosters. at
yeah, I
this
don't
point.
know. Are people
Yeah.
still getting boosted?
Yeah, I got a booster back in December, I think. I think it's like a yearly thing, like a flu shot.
All I know is I got the Johnson & Johnson, and then the next day they came out with the Pfizer and Moderna ones, and I very upset about it. I don't know if you saw the memes about people that took the J&J vaccine.
Didn't they ban that one in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah, it's banned.
Okay.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Probably.
I thought they stopped using it. Well, we're glad that you're healthy, and we're glad that you're able to do the 4th session of Soprano's Machete Order. In the last session, we reviewed season 2, episode 3, Toodle Fucking Do, episode 10, Bust Out, and episode 12, A Knight in White Satin Armor.
Now that we're on video, the people can see that Esther was staring at me. He was like gunning me down as he was saying it.
That was from memory.
I was looking everywhere else other than into his eyes.
I needed to make sure that they were right, but no, those are the right ones.
Yeah, they are.
I was looking for some sort of confirmation. Neither of you gave it to me, so awesome. Good teamwork. We skipped a lot of season 2 because this is Machete Order and we have to be ruthless, but Maxine, curious about your thoughts, themes that you picked up on, questions that you might have. What'd you think?
I think in this session, I feel like I missed a lot of who people are, who died. I have a lot of questions about like, who is this person? Why is he important? I think in these 3 episodes, Sal starts working with the police.
Yeah.
He's wearing a wire. And I thought in the beginning of this, you guys mentioned that he was Tony's right-hand man. So we'll get into that later. But we meet Richie in these 3 episodes. And I'm assuming you chose these 3 episodes because...
Love Richie. Sorry.
I can't tell how I felt about him. But I don't know. Did you guys pick these 3 episodes so I could see his like entire arc throughout this season? Because I also remember you both saying before that each season kind of has like a theme or like a big boss. And I'm just wondering if you were showing me these 2 episodes because Richie was that for this season.
In terms of the arc, I'll defer to SG on that. Episode 3 in particular, though, the introduction of Richie was a must. We had to show you him and Beansy.
Poor Beansy.
Together at the pizza. Poor Beansy.
Poor Beansy. Beansy gets demolished for these like 3 episodes. He gets hit in his own restaurant. He gets hit by a car. He's in the hospital the entire time.
Yeah. He's got it rough.
Another thing I was curious about, maybe we can go back to this, Beansy's and Tony's relationship. Because Tony visits Beansy in the hospital and obviously like gives him money. So I don't know if they had like a thing in the past, if Beansy is like part of Tony's operation in some way, or like what's Richie's deal with him?
Well, to answer the original question that you brought up, which is why did we pick these 3 episodes? Yes, one of the big reasons that we did it was to show you Richie's arc and make sure that you were able to see who he is as a character, how, as Ross had put it in our last session, how you take back what was once yours. And that dynamic of being in the mafia, of the guys who go away and then coming back, there's a lot of obvious friction that can happen. I think that can happen to anybody when you come back to a place or you come back to a business that has been removed from you for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Everything's different. And that's the big conflict of season 2, is showing how is Tony trying to assert his authority among all these rival families. Because don't forget, it's not like there's just one organized crime family. There's a bunch of small families that are all in these kind of loose alliances. There's the Aprils. And what you probably didn't pick up on is that Richie April is the brother of Jackie April, who in the very beginning of the show is the head of this New Jersey family. And then he dies of cancer. And Richie's his brother.
Okay.
Yeah. His older brother.
Yeah, his older brother. So they kind of now have merged families with the Soprano family, and Tony's the boss. Mm-hmm. And that's what their conflict is created by, is Tony now running things that his brother used to run. And Beansy is part of this association.
Yeah, and as you can tell, Richie has a real issue with someone younger than him running the family.
Yeah.
Right. You see that a few times in the episode in the mall, particular.
Ross, you had mentioned in the last session that Richie was your favorite character of all time on The Sopranos. And that was one of the big reasons that we went this way with this. It's a tribute to you, our guest host, Ross. We didn't get into it a ton, but what do you love so much about Richie April?
So Richie April is a small man.
He is the tiniest man.
Tiniest man, but he carries himself like he's, 6'5" or taller. And I think it's just such a great representation of a person in the mafia that, doesn't have the formidable physical size, but just has a way of speaking and manipulating and pushing people around verbally, right? In a way that just, they succumb to their will. And I think Richie is just so good at that. And the actor just kills it.
Yeah. I mean, David Proval, who, by the way, turned 82 on May 20th. He's a Taurus just like me. Apparently that yoga that he was doing really has been paying off for him. But yeah, he does. He has a death stare that he can generate, unlike almost any actor I've ever seen. On set, they used to call them the Manson lanterns. his eyes. The way he would stare at people. And he really does. Like when he's going, there's a lot of confrontations with him and Tony, especially in Toodle-Doo. For some reason, they always take place outside the Victoria's Secret. Not sure what that was all about. But when he's staring at him, he's like, he looks like he's the same height as Tony, just the way that he holds his posture. But yeah.
I wonder if they shot that differently, because you know how in some movies, if an actor's like a different height, they'll put them on like Apple box or something
like
and
Tom
make
Cruise.
them make them like the same height. So I wonder if with those scenes, they did that to Richie to like make him have the same dynamic as Tony. I'm sure this is something we can look up and maybe listeners can write in and tell us if that's what happened or if I'm just speculating.
I'd be surprised. I think that him being shorter than James Gandolfini was part of why they cast him, because it doesn't matter what size you are to have to be a tough guy in the mafia. You have to have a ruthlessness.
I was just going to say the same thing. That is the beauty of being in the mafia. You can be any size. It's just a matter of how brutal and lethal you're willing to be.
When he runs over Beansy in the truck, he's still smoking the cigarette. Just doesn't even look phased. That's what it takes, kids. If you want to be in the mafia, learn how to run a man over while still smoking a cigarette, and do it twice.
Do you know about short guy energy?
Oh yeah.
Richie
short
has
king.
Short king. Yeah, I don't know if he's like short king category, but he's definitely short guy energy.
A big dick energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, no.
No.
Different energy.
I guess that's a different energy.
Different energy.
Oh, okay.
It's like.
Can we unpack that a little bit? I'm curious.
Esther's like, what do you guys mean?
Kind of felt like they would be the same thing.
No, because short guy energy means you're like making up for something. You're like short and you're like insecure about it. Yeah. You're like insecure about it. So you're like toughing yourself up. Maybe he is like the original short guy energy.
Yeah, he definitely has that Napoleonic. I guess that's the Napoleonic complex too.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Opposite of big dick energy. Good. We have made progress in understanding the male psyche, which is a lot about what this show is all about, especially this episode, I think. You know, we've got the return of Richie Aprile, the introduction, really, of Richie Aprile. That is the main reason that we picked this episode for Ross. But in my opinion, this is really a story about Meadow.
Yeah.
We see a lot of her not behaving herself, being a teenage girl. And we see a lot of the Sopranos parenting style.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
I think in this episode too, we see a lot of how Meadow has Tony traits in the way she manipulates the situation when they ground her. And she already comes in with a script of what she wants to be taken away.
Yeah.
She's like, take my Discover card 1 week. You know what? 2 weeks. And then calls her friend later and is like, yeah, I got him to do it. And then they give her money anyways.
Yeah.
So she's never actually grounded. Yeah, I don't know. This is Meadow's manipulation coming out in this episode. And I don't think I saw it in season 1.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, you know, as powerful as Tony is in almost every facet of life, there's nothing like your daughter, right?
Yeah.
To get that you just bend your will, that you bend your will to. And you can see that with Tony, that he's effectively powerless.
Yeah.
Managing the situation.
He says that. If she finds out we're powerless, we're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also appreciated the irony of this ruthless murderer, this capo of a crime family, being a normal type of parent to his children. He doesn't physically abuse her. He doesn't even really verbally abuse her.
Yeah.
And he feels the same frustrations that I think a lot of parents must feel around not overplaying their hand, can't punish her too much. They have a whole conversation about this in the bedroom where Carmela is lamenting about how if you ground them or take away their car, now you're their chauffeur.
Yeah.
He has these very common everyday challenges of being a dad, despite the fact that he's a guy who has no problem extracting violence on anybody who doesn't do what he wants.
Yeah. Do you know another reason why I realized that Meadow was insane this episode, or something is wrong with her psyche. The way she is cooking in the kitchen in this episode, her and her friend are like trashing the entire kitchen and puts the most butter I've ever seen in a pan to make grilled cheese, and then just spilling chocolate milk everywhere. That's when I knew this girl is not a normal girl. There's something wrong with her psyche in there.
She's very
to cook like that.
Very entitled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and/or just spoiled and has never really had to do anything for herself.
Yeah. What's interesting is how this sets up a confrontation with Janice. And you really hadn't seen much of Janice, I don't think, prior to this episode.
I haven't. Yeah. This might be the first episode she's in because she moves into their house in this episode. Where's she coming from? I know she mentioned Seattle, but was she like abroad somewhere?
She was in Seattle last before moving back to Jersey. And yeah, they portray her past, and I guess in this episode as well, just this very earthy, granola-y, living off the land style.
She changed her name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Janice is not the smartest person. This episode really highlights it for me. I should say it's her lack of awareness, getting involved in the dynamic between Meadow and her parents, just inserting herself in such an awkward and inappropriate way. You just get a taste for what's to come with Janice, which is never really does the right thing at the right moment.
Yeah. And then she like completely switches when she actually sees the house that Meadow trashed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We get to meet Janice. I don't know if I missed anything in this episode and episode, I think, 10, but can you explain what Richie and Janice's relationship was like before he got out? Like, do they explore that at all? Or is it just they were dating and then they didn't and then he's out?
More so that. They were dating, then they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see pretty much everything about the past of their relationship when you see them reconnect at the yoga session.
Okay.
And then when Richie comes back in the hospital scene where he's bringing Olivia some flowers, that's their first two real encounters, and you don't know much other than that they used to date.
Yeah.
But it's pretty manipulative of Richie, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, just back to Richie for a second. You got to love the meditation, right? He's talking to Beansy about that in the restaurant. He's doing yoga, and then he's just bashing Beansy to death, Yeah,
he's very surface woke, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also miss a great scene that we had to skip over in the whole machete order business, where Tony confronts Richie after him and Janice start sleeping together, and Richie says to him, "I thought a lot about her." And Tony says, "There are men in the can better looking than my sister." It's not a lot. That's a great line. It's just a lot of love in the Soprano household. I think that there was an interesting point at the end of this episode. Tony's going to let somebody into his grandmother's house. The house had been trashed during the party that Meadow had, and Meadow's there cleaning. And I thought that was an interesting turn for her character to take, because she doesn't seem to have any remorse for her actions. One of the big themes of this episode seemed to be, it's not my fault. Yeah. There's a lot of Meadow saying, this isn't my fault. It was my friend's friend who brought over the cocaine and all the other drugs, and it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. How many times do I have to say it? She's pushing off that denial. I think a lot of what we see with Tony too, especially what we'll see later with Bust Out and with episode 12, Knight in White Satin Armor. But what did you think turned Meadow to make her realize the error of her ways, and that the true punishment was all along cleaning up the mess from the party?
I think I missed out on what changed Meadow, because I was kind of focused more on the fact, or there is this like one shot throwaway scene where Janice is like going back into the house, and she's checking the mail, and she gets like a disability check. And I was more focused on like figuring out what her whole deal is than paying attention to like what switched Meadow. So we can like fill that in for me. Maybe both.
What do you think, Ross?
It's a good question. I think it was Meadow watching Janice and her parents get into it, especially Carmela.
Yeah.
And then realizing that Janice is defending her when, she's really at fault here. And just the guilt coming from that prompted to do the right thing.
Yeah. When Janice is like, Janice calls out Tony and Carmela, being like, "Oh, you took away her Discover card for 3 weeks? Oh, real tough."
Yeah.
And it's Carmela who's defending her daughter and defending her parenting decisions, really. But I agree, Ross. I think it is Meadow overhearing that conversation, which actually is a little bit of bad editing, if I could be critical of the actual filming and producing of this particular episode, because that fight happens and Meadow hears it. But then the last scene that we see before she's cleaning up the apartment is her talking to Hunter, her friend, and bragging and making that sloppy grilled cheese and the chocolate milk.
I think maybe that's the thing that confused me.
Yeah. Like she was glad she got away with it.
I felt like that conversation might have been just a throwaway conversation, you know, and she didn't really take anything from it. But maybe during that fight, when she's listening to it from the stairs, she's realizing she's caught and less about feeling guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it would have been better if you had flipped those two scenes. And I think you probably could have done it without there being a continuity problem. Well, that's the ace plot in my mind is Meadow in the house and that juxtaposition of a mobster trying to be a parent, the idea of not being at fault for your actions, even though you are, and ultimately recognizing how you take responsibility for it, which Meadow finally does. We obviously have the return of Richie Aprile. We have the conflict with Beansy. There's also a little bit of Dr. Melfi in this, and I think that, again, without all of the episodes, you might have been thrown off of the context of the relationship that she currently has with Tony. And that's where the name comes from, Toodle fucking do, because she says that to him in the restaurant. Was it clear to you that that Tony was no longer seeing her as a patient?
No. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too.
That's what we're here for.
So what happened between the season 1 and season 2? Because after seeing him, she sees her own therapist and then has that dream about him where he's having like a panic attack in the car. So what happened between, season 1 and now?
I remember. What did happen? Tony probably being a jerk. Because it's happened so many times in the show. Honestly, they all bleed together for me.
They have a complicated relationship.
Coming out of her office. Yeah.
They're currently on the outs. And the reason for that is because Tony had to put her into the witness protection at the end of season 1, which you saw parts of.
Yeah.
And when season 2 opens up, there's still some conflict between Tony and he's not completely sure that the issue with Junior has been settled. So Melfi is seeing patients out of a motel room, which I think she references. And then one of her patients commits suicide. And so when Tony wants to see her again, she refuses to see him and then starts to feel guilty about turning him away because he's asking for help. And she feels this sense of obligation to a former patient, which is why she has the dream. And there's a lot of friction that you see in the restaurant where they run into each other. And is he gaslighting her in that scene? It feels to me, I don't think I should speak on this as a man, but he seems to be, even though he's the one who is the reason why they aren't seeing each other anymore professionally. Yeah. He seems to make a very big effort to make her feel uncomfortable, make her feel like she did something wrong.
Well, doesn't she do something like that to him in season 1? They meet each other in that restaurant again and he tries to say hi and she kind of pretends like she doesn't know him for like that patient-doctor relationship. So it didn't exactly feel gaslighty or like making her feel bad to me. It kind of just felt like the roles were reversed from that first season.
Okay.
Yeah. I think more than anything, she just kind of turned into a little schoolgirl when she saw him and regretted what she said after.
Yeah. Like she said to her therapist.
And is it a romantic type of thing? Is she attracted? Is there an attraction there? Or is it just an awkwardness that regresses her to being more of like a, Ross, like you're saying, a schoolgirl?
I think it could be both. It doesn't, I don't know. Maybe this happens in later seasons, but it doesn't exactly feel romantic to me. You know, when you like trauma bond with someone, it kind of feels more like a trauma bond than a romantic relationship, at least right now. Like she cares so much for Tony's well-being and his mental health that it doesn't exactly feel romantic as much as she just wants to like protect this person.
Well, if you think there's a trauma bond now, just wait.
Just wait.
All right. Favorite line, favorite scene?
Something about the editing when Richie hits Beansy with his car and he just kind of like splats onto the other car. The way that the Sopranos editors edit violent scenes is so funny. When
you can say bad.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's bad, but it is also so funny. Like last season when that guy got shot and he just like went limb.
Yeah.
The same thing that happened with Beansy when he got hit by the car.
Yeah, they have some weird editing choices with the close-up action shots before the impact of whatever projectile is going to hit them. Ross, what did you think? Favorite scenes, favorite lines?
Definitely the restaurant with Beansy. Veal Parmigiana sandwich. Fuck you.
You see him put that coffee pot down in front of them, and you just know this thing is getting smashed over this guy's face. just like a noose just hanging there. Like, I wonder what they're going to use that for.
Just want to call out too. I have it in my notes that, Beansy, also Marvin from Entourage, the accountant.
Oh, you're right. Good call.
And unfortunately, Marvin / Beansy died in 2022.
Oh, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Good actor.
So Richie Aprile is doing a little better. He's made out better than
It's
Beansy.
that yoga, man. Also, not being paraplegic might have helped.
Beansy didn't look like he was working out, I just got to say.
He works in a pizza shop. Long hours, bad food. I loved the line, if she finds out we're powerless, we're fucked. When Tony's talking about Meadow, and I feel like that is the trick of parenting, is just to try to make sure your children think that there is some sort of power you wield over them. But in fact, I don't know, Ross, you're the father of two now. Who has the real power?
Not me. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
And I think the best thing is that Meadow already knows. They're not hiding anything. Meadow already knows that she's the one with power. They got nothing on her.
Yeah. The other line, what's mine is not yours to give me, I think very much sums up Richie Aprile's whole story arc.
Yeah.
And that leads us into Bust Out. We jump 7 episodes ahead, and we are now in a situation with a character named Davy.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't give you a lot of context about old Davy.
I think I picked up a few things. They were long time, like childhood friends.
Yeah, they go back. They'd been part of the same high school class.
He has a gambling addiction.
Oh, yeah.
And he has his, what business is it? Is it just like
a Bass Pro Sports?
Yeah.
Dick's Sporting Goods?
Yeah.
Models? Sports Authority? I keep naming sports retail chains.
How many can you name?
I don't know. I think that's it.
But yeah, it looks like Tony, Richie, and the rest of them have like gone into business together, and I don't exactly know how they got there. So can you fill me in on what happened?
Yeah, they're basically running a scheme, leveraging the store's credit to buy a bunch of goods and then illegally sell them. And they're just poor Davy too.
Yeah.
Davy and Beansy can be in their own little therapy group. They're just squeezing it like our Davy.
How did they get there?
They got there because Davy is a gambling addict. And he, in one of the episodes, I don't think it's really crucial to understand how he got there, but it is backstory that we probably should have told you before we went into the episode, but we didn't, and we're here now. It's fine. They get to that point because Davy convinces Tony to let him into this high stakes poker game.
Mm-hmm.
And he proceeds to not only lose all the money that he brought, but then he's in debt to Tony at the end of the game for like $60,000 or $80,000.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have it. So this is how they're extracting payment from him, by making him do all of these purchases on credit that he's not going to be able to pay back, so that he can try to pay down their debt.
Yeah.
And he's obviously lost it all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the big plot lines of this episode. We've got Davy. That's where the title comes from, Bust Out. There's a lot, I think, that goes on there. In terms of other plot lines, we've got a little bit more of Carmela having some more.
Carmela makes a new friend.
In this
one.
Replaces the priest. Yeah. There's a lot around Tony, and there's this murder rap that he's being accused of with Matthew Bevilacqua. You don't get to see that either. And this is one of the big pieces that we missed. So I'll turn it over and ask if there are any questions that you have around that, which I'm sure there are.
Yeah, so this episode opens when Chris and Tony are shooting someone. Is that, what's his name? Matthew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not Chris.
It's not Chris.
No.
But Chris is shot.
Yes.
He's in the hospital in this episode too. What happened to him? How did he get there? How did Matthew get shot, and how did Chris end up in the hospital?
So this is a lot of what we missed. And that is a power struggle that happened with Matthew Bevilacqua and then this other kid. I can't remember his name, but they're the two young aspiring mobsters who are working for Chris. They're working under Chris. And there's this whole financial stock market scam that they're working on together that isn't really an important part of the story. What is important is the fact that over time, the two under kids get resentful of Chris. They want to try to rise up in the family, and they think that trying to align with Richie Aprile would be beneficial to them. Richie doesn't like Chris. We saw that in the last episode where he talks about not putting his hands on his cousin unless he marries her, which is a really weird standard to have.
I think it's a call to the next episode we're going to talk about. But
And so Matthew Bevilacqua and his friend decide to try to assassinate Chris, and they shoot Chris. Chris ends up killing the other kid, and then Matthew Bevilacqua goes on the lam and eventually is found and eventually executed by Tony.
The follow-up question that I had, which maybe doesn't really matter for the show, what is Chris's job? Because he jumps, in the first season, I've only seen him like working with Tony, but in this season, he's in his own office, he has a nice suit, he has a nice watch. What does he do?
Yeah, that's all just a front for the scam.
Okay.
But what he does is just mobster stuff.
Yeah, whatever Tony needs Tim to do. They have lots of different jobs. You know, they're working in a sporting goods store, they run a card game, they're working on the stock market, they're in garbage. They're constantly evolving. I kind of like the entrepreneurial spirit of the mob in that way. I think that's
something about those mobsters.
They're go-getters. You know, they really seize opportunity. But yeah, they're doing all sorts of different things, and it isn't, again, that's not an important part of the story as much as the idea of feeling guilt for what you've done, the idea of trying to be a good parent, trying to be a loyal partner, or not being a loyal partner or a good parent. But yeah, that's kind of what Chris is doing, and it's a shame that we don't get to see more of Christopher during season 2 here, but I promise you there will be a lot more of him as the show goes on. And I think, again, to kind of round out the Richie Aprile storyline, this was an important episode to be showing you. And it also, I think, adds an important level of context to Carmela and what's going on with her and why she ends up kind of having a moment of passion with Victor Gusto, the wallpaper guy. Very, very, immediate chemistry there when he comes over to the house to pick up his sister, who is Davy's wife.
Everyone's connected, by the way, if you haven't noticed yet.
What's that?
Richie's dating Janice, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Richie's niece is dating Chris. It's like
everybody knows everybody. It's very Italian, though. That's how.
Yeah.
Everyone's connected to everybody some way. The 2 points of separation, at least.
I liked the little relationship.
Yeah.
But Vic breaks it off as soon as he finds out who her husband is. And is it just because he's already like adjacent to the family, so he kind of knows everything that's going on with Tony, or is it because like what's the deal?
I think the short answer is yes. He knows who Tony is and is a wise man to stay out of that situation.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really stay away from it until he realizes that Davy has gone completely bankrupt to Tony.
Right.
Which was interesting. An interesting choice on his part. I'm not sure if he didn't realize how much of a mobster Tony Soprano actually was. But when Carmela invites him over for that romantic lunch, and man, does she put a lot of effort into that lunch. I mean, some wine in the middle of the day. She's like souffling a duck. She's got the Shania Twain soundtrack going. It's
Eddie Falco. You can make me lunch any day you want. Does every meal she makes just seems like a joy.
It's incredible. Yeah, I would definitely risk running against Tony Soprano just for the meal. That would be nice. I thought Meadow had a good line about it. Sometimes we're all hypocrites, and there's a lot of hypocrisy that I think Carmela's character shows in the way that she talks about Tony and the things that he does, and then what she chooses to do.
Yeah, and then I think we see more of this in the next episode when Tony's mistress comes into the picture. But we can talk about more when we get to the next episode.
With regards to Carmela's actions, I don't blame her for what she's doing. I mean, Tony's a pretty shitty husband to her.
Vic's a cutie. I don't know. Go Carmela. Yeah.
Good looking dude. Can't blame her.
Yeah. Very, very studly. But Tony's setting her up, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a lot of inconsistencies in this episode with Tony as a family man. You know, he's talking throughout the episode about wanting to be a better father for AJ, but wanting to show up for him. And he's doing it in all the wrong ways. He's trying to get him to go to a movie spontaneously. He gets him a fishing pole that he forgets he asked for. And then later on, he forgets to go to AJ's swim meet, which he had told him that he would go to, and then completely forgets about it.
I had a thought during this episode, and I think throughout what I've seen of Tony's character so far is that Tony's a kind of person who loves on his own terms. With Carmilla and like getting jealous about her and the priest when nothing's actually going on, but going and having like a mistress for 2 years, or like Meadow. And I don't know. I think he has a soft spot for Meadow, but AJ is kind of the forgotten child where he only really cares about him when he realizes that he doesn't want him to end up like Chris, and then gets him all these things and doesn't go to his swim meet. I think maybe throughout the series too, we'll see more of how Tony's a very selfish man and he loves very selfishly.
Yeah. Loving on his own terms. I think that's well put, and definitely something that I think was consistent about a person who feels like they're the boss, that they're always in control. They will choose when to love. And if you're not going to meet them where they want to love you, they're going to move on and find somebody else who they want to love instead, or who's going to give them or accept the love that they're willing to offer. I thought it was really interesting how differently Tony talks about Christopher between the last episode that we watched, episode 3, and episode 10 here. In episode 3, when Richie first meets him, he's standing up for Christopher. He's like, oh, he's a good kid. He's got good potential. And then by now, Christopher's been shot through no fault of his own, killed a guy after he got shot, which you didn't get to see, but is now recovering in the hospital. And Tony's in bed talking to Carmel about how he's worried that AJ might end up like Christopher. Like it's a bad thing all of a sudden. So he's a very fickle person when it comes to the love that he chooses to give.
Well, do you think this is Tony realizing that Chris is weak? You know what I mean? Because Chris couldn't handle this on his own. He got shot, and now Tony sees him as lesser and can't do the things that Tony needs him to do.
And not just that, but Tony is now being accused. There's an eyeball witness, as Paulie says, and Tony's stressing out about it. Right? He's like, I didn't even do it. So he's feeling angry about the position that he was in because he was defending Chris and he was sticking up for his family. So I think that this is probably the first of the erosion of Tony's confidence in Chris. And that's going to be a very big theme of the show, is how you adjust and recalibrate your opinion about somebody as they demonstrate their own abilities to you or their lack of ability.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Maxine hit it on the head when you said, his first inkling that Christopher's weak. This just escalates as the series goes on. You'll see Christopher's weaknesses really come to the forefront. And everything you said actually is true. His confidence in erodes as a result of it.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, AJ, the scene with him freaking out about the spider.
That was very sweet. That was very endearing for me. And just seeing AJ freak out to the point where he's just like jumping in the pool. It was like, get me out of here. I don't want to be part of this. It was very sweet.
That's one of those things too. You look at it like, all right, here's the mob boss with the son who's too scared of spiders.
Yeah.
And Tony being just such a gentle father to him. Like he does not want to be the type of violent parent that you can imagine he was brought up with. I think that's an interesting commentary about parents. And God help me, am I giving a compliment to the boomers right now? But for as bad of a father as Tony is with his infidelity, with his selfish ways of loving, he is a better father, or he's a better parent to his kids than his parents were to him.
Yeah.
Low bar.
Fair. Very fair. We see Sal, or Pussy as we call him, being very uncooperative as a guy who's wearing a wire who's been flipped to the feds.
I missed that part too. So suddenly Sal is a rat, right? How did we get there?
Well, we saw Pussy get arrested in the indictments in season 1, and then he disappeared because there was suspicion that he was a rat. And they realized that it was actually Jimmy Altieri who got killed at the finale of season 1, who was the guy that they thought was the rat. But Pussy went missing anyway. Then he comes back. They take him back in. But as you see in Bust Out, bygones are never bygones. I feel like that was a pretty good impression. We'll have to add that one.
You're getting better at them.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's a bottom 5.
And yeah, he's been accused of selling heroin, or caught selling heroin, and has made a deal with the FBI to try to inform on Tony in exchange for going into the witness protection at some point. So that's where he is. And obviously that's going to lead us into a further conflict as we have a rat in the crew.
Can we talk about the relationship between Officer Skip LaPerry and Pussy?
Yeah.
And how much spit is swapped anytime that those two are in a car together?
So don't go pulling my taffy. Because as of this fucking second, if you lie to me, you will never see the streets where you live for 50 fucking years.
Lisp is insane. The first note I have on this guy is, how is he talking like that? I was like, who is this man? How is he talking like that? Is that his real voice? Do we know?
I don't know. I mean, it sounds
real.
why would you want to do an impression of a lisp? Like where does that directing decision come from? You know, it would be great if this FBI agent had a lisp. Who can we cast that's really going to be able to do that?
When he's talking, you can almost see his tongue coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that is how that guy actually speaks.
I do like Lombardi as an actor, but the casting for this one, it was hard to take him seriously, at least for
Lou
me.
Lombardi, who plays Skip Lipari.
Yeah.
What, Ross, do you know what else he was in? You were nailing it with Beamsy.
Entourage, right?
Skip's in Entourage as well?
Oh, I don't know. I thought he was because of how you framed it.
Oh no, I'm legitimately asking you. I don't know.
I think he actually is. Let me look him up here.
You know, your brother said that we needed somebody who was like researching while we're recording, and then I asked him if he would be willing to fill that role for us, and he's not here, so here we are.
A gentle no.
I'm right. He's in Entourage.
Is he really?
Oh yeah.
For what? What's his character there?
I'll have to find it here.
All right. Well, either way,
Ronnie. He's Ronnie.
A lot of spit.
So much spit. My car is 90% spit. They have to wipe down the windshield wipers after they're done talking.
They do look like two cartoon characters kind of going back
They
and
do.
forth. And when he's getting upset about, if you didn't tell me about this murder and you found out and you weren't wearing the wire, like just, a lot of spit. Is that your favorite scene, the two of them in the car?
Yeah, anytime the two of those two are together, it's just hysterical.
Favorite scene, favorite lines?
Well, we haven't really talked about kind of Janice flipping on Tony in her interactions with Richie.
Yeah.
So Janice and Richie are officially back together.
Yep. That's maybe my favorite Soprano sex scene.
Wait, he's holding the gun to her head. That's crazy.
It was great.
It's quite a fantasy those two are living out.
Yeah.
I mean, what's Janice telling Richie? It should be you.
Yeah.
I mean,
he doesn't like that. He's changed a lot in these 7 episodes. He's gone from a guy who's really rebelling against Tony and very spiteful of the authority to a guy who is kind of settled in and accepted things for what they are. You know, he's an old school guy. There's a way that things are supposed to get done. It's not like Tony has to compete for the job or audition for the job. He's already got the job. And as much as Richie might not like him or think it should be somebody else, maybe think it should be him, he respects that Tony is the capo of the family. And when Richie says, or when Janice says, oh, it should be you, he doesn't, it's a big turnoff for him.
Well, in this episode too, Richie goes to Junior and says, is it in this episode?
I think it's in the next episode.
Okay.
Where he goes to Junior and he asks if he can get the blessing of some other of the capos of different families to try to put a hit on Tony again. Yeah. But it plants the seed for him. And there's an episode that you miss where there's a point where you actually see Richie gives Tony a jacket and then Tony gives the jacket away, and that insults Richie. It's always little things that upset these mobsters and really set the vendetta on them. You know, it's putting your mother in a nursing home or not regifting a jacket. You know, it's just
we're forgetting the best part of the episode, which is after Richie and Janice stop, Liv comes down the stairs in her little chair. It's like, what's going on?
Are you smoking marijuana?
If you need something, call. I'll bring it up.
Are you smoking marijuana?
One TV in that household. The other thing with these mobsters is for all the wealth that they should be making, they all live in except for Tony, they all don't really live in nice homes.
Yeah.
Like Richie's living with Janice and Janice's mother. You know, Olivia was a mob boss, wife. You'd think that they would be a little bit better off. Junior lives in a very humble home.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Are they trying to be quiet about it?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Richie just out of jail. You know, maybe he's just trying to get back on his feet.
I would also say that my favorite line of this episode is when Tony is yelling at Davey because Tony's upset about the murder. And Davey comes out upset that they're on to him and that the credit card companies are calling. And he yells at him to get back in your hole.
It's a fucking lien on the building. They're gonna close me down.
Davey, not fucking now, okay?
They're gonna know after this that it's fraud. I'm gonna go to jail for this.
Get the fuck back in your fucking hole! Now! Davey, you're doing a good job.
Flipping on the switch. We talked about that in the last session, Ross, about how you could just be so mean and then immediately just change his tune and flip those emotions. Very sociopathic. And I thought it was a good line.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Just one more thing before we stop with this episode. Tony's seeing the psychiatrist again?
Yeah. Yeah, you start seeing Melfi again. And those conversations, I think there's a similar echo to episode 3 of It's Not My Fault. And a lot of what Tony is talking about and rationalizing in his therapy sessions in this episode are about how he didn't even do it. He is completely denying any involvement of this murder that he absolutely did. We see him do it, but it's that whole thing. It's not my fault. Even Davey at one point says it's not my fault about the situation that he's in. And there is a true lack of accountability that is happening in both of these episodes. And I think that's one of the things that ties this little segment of Machete Order, this installment, together very well, is lack of accountability and wanting to look everywhere but to yourself when something bad happens. So speaking of something bad happening, let's move on to episode 12 of season 2, our last episode of this installment of Machete Order, Knight in White Satin Armor.
I gotta say, you guys really put a nice bow on this for me. I feel like I saw the entire Richie storyline.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Good job.
Appreciate it. My question to you is, after watching this episode, who do you think is the Knight in White Satin Armor?
Ooh, good question.
And for context, this is the reference that Rena makes when she's lamenting. And the episode, one of the plot lines is Tony tries to break it off with his mistress, Irina, and she's upset and she's lamenting about how she doesn't have anybody who's taking care of her. Where's her knight in white satin armor? She obviously is getting some expressions in English confused because she's a Russian. But I was curious. I started thinking more about, white satin and which characters we see wearing white satin, which would be wedding gowns.
I don't know if I have an answer for this.
Ross?
I'm not sure I have an answer either.
Well, I was thinking about how in the beginning of the episode, you see a great scene between Carmela and Janice where Janice is trying on a wedding gown, a white satin gown. And Richie gets assassinated in this episode by Janice. And it comes
very
immediately.
Girl boss moment.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk to us a little bit about this scene.
Okay, so this for listeners out there, the whole episode centers around Richie and Janice are engaged. They're about to get married. They're planning the wedding. They have an engagement party. And, towards the end of the episode, Janice and Richie get into a fight because in the beginning of this episode, is it Richie's son who's dancing throughout the house?
Which is a great opening scene.
I thought it was a dream sequence. That was great. But he's talking about how, there's a gay thing to do. And then Janice is like, so what if he is gay? And then Richie punches her in the face.
Yeah.
And Janice is like, no way. And then, gets a gun and shoots him. I thought this was maybe not a great callback, but a callback to when he told Chris in episode 3, don't put her hands on her unless she has a ring on her finger.
Yeah.
And now there's a ring on Janice's finger and he feels like he could do that. But quickly, I guess he didn't learn it because he's dead, but learns that he can't do that. And yeah, I thought it was a great scene. Great way for Richie to go out after Tony puts a hit on him. And now Tony doesn't really have to do anything.
No.
Yeah.
Works out well for Tony. And I'd say Janice is the knight in white satin armor coming to Tony's rescue, not really knowing that Tony had already decided that this guy had to go.
Yeah.
You could see him.
You could see him smiling a little bit. As he walks in the door, Janice is standing over Richie's dead body, and you can see him smile a little bit, but move his hand over his mouth when he sees it.
Very good acting on James Gandolfini's part.
Yeah, and of course, kind of ironic that Janice wanted Tony out of the picture too, and ends up killing Richie, who wanted him out of the picture. It's everyone wants Tony out of the picture.
Yeah,
at some point.
Yeah, that's a common theme throughout the entire show. I was surprised at how quickly Janice goes from she gets punched in the face, not slapped, not a backhand,
punched. You can see the bruise in the next scene. I think.
Yeah. And then Richie just goes back to his dinner, which was, when you talk about sociopathic behavior, that's out there. This is a woman that you're going to marry. But it definitely brought something back for Janice that she was not going to take that from anybody. And she comes out with the gun. I love that he tries to be like, what are you doing? Don't. And then just boom, boom, he's gone. And we have, I guess, a very feministic expression of.
Good for her.
Yeah.
You know those, there's like a trend called good for her movies.
I'm unfamiliar. Yeah. Give us an example.
Have you seen Gone Girl with Ben Affleck?
I have, yep.
The whole movie's like, good for her.
Yeah.
He deserved it.
Yeah, this is kind of a good for her moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good for her.
I like it. Good for her. Good for Janice. We won't be saying that, I think, a ton about Janice. She's more as much of an antagonist as a protagonist to Tony, I would say. But I also thought it was interesting where you do see the scene of Janice trying on the wedding dresses and Carmela is talking to her the way that I think Olivia would probably have talked to Carmela about how Janice is going to have to accept a guma. And that's where Janice admits that she likes to have sex with Richie while he's holding a gun.
Ugh.
And usually he takes the clip out. And there's a lot, obviously, around Irina in this episode, too. Tony's mistress.
I think I missed in the beginning when they like started this whole thing. How long I know they said in the episode like 2 years, but this is the first time I'm seeing her. So what's like her or their backstory? How did they meet? How important has she been in the past season?
Well, she's not a super relevant character.
She just comes like every so often.
Yeah, and you don't see her meet Tony. They've just been kind of carrying on like this. What I thought was interesting is that Tony now decides not to continue the affair anymore, and what might have brought that about for him. I mean, you saw the previous episode, so you have a little bit of continuity here. But what were your thoughts around why Tony might have decided now he no longer wants to see her?
Is it because he figured out Carmela and Vic? No?
I mean, we don't see him.
Oh, Tony doesn't meet
her about
him.
it.
Yeah.
No, Tony never meets him, and that kind of like ends pretty much right away. And I think you see him appear again in this episode where Carmela says, "Thank you for not coming over. You did me a big favor." And then he's very relieved. But yeah, as far as I know, that's not something Tony was aware of.
So what was Tony's switch?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing about it.
I think Janice found out about it, right? And told Tony.
Found out about the wallpaper guy?
No, about the Gumar, about Irina.
Probably. Yeah.
I think that's what happened. And then once Tony knew that Janice knew about it, she's a big mouth, decided to end things.
Yeah, that would be a good reason to want to end it. I also think that for Tony, there's this weird double standard of he's fine with having this woman be sort of, well, no, let me start over. I think with Tony, there is an expectation that this woman should want to have a family, that she should want somebody who's going to take care of her and be that white, or the knight in white satin armor. But she's fine with just being Tony's mistress. You know, she talks about the limo driver and he says, you know, you should have somebody who's going to take care of you and be there for you. And she says, he can't give me what I want. And what she wants is just to kind of have all these things and to not have to worry about money and to feel like she's being taken care of materialistically. And for some reason, that really turns Tony off. And he decides that this is not somebody he wants to be with. And maybe it is also that Janice is out there lingering as a looming threat. And I also think that with these types of relationships, you are at some point looking to end them.
Yeah,
because that's the
dime a dozen for Tony, I think.
Yeah, it's like a DiCaprio girlfriend. You know, she turns 26 and no longer can be tolerated.
Yeah. Yeah. Long story short, I don't think it takes much to end one of these Gumar relationships.
No, probably not. There's also Junior making the decision to not side with Richie April when Richie comes to him and says, "Oh, I wasn't able to get the other families to back this." Junior realizes Richie's not actually that powerful and goes and sides with Tony and then double crosses Richie and says, "All right, well, this is what's happening." And that's what leads Tony to doing the hit on Richie, which he never ends up actually having to do.
No. Great for Tony. That's why he's so happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tony feels very self-righteous about everything, right? He's feeling like things are pretty good, all things considered. We get to see a little bit of a body cleanup and who's he call? I thought that was interesting.
Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though he's unreliable, even though he might be weak and he's worried about him, like when things need to really get cleaned up, the guy that Tony calls is Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's loyal. He's Johnny on the spot.
Ross, any other thoughts around Knight in White Satin Armor? Your boy's dead. I mean, that must have hurt.
I'm sorry for your loss, Ross.
Yeah. I mean, really didn't see, when I was watching in real time, I did not see Janice being the person to do it, even though some others may have seen that. Yeah. It's always sad to see some of these characters go,
Yeah. Yeah. Richie was an all-timer. And we will miss him, but there will be other antagonists that will be coming down the road. Yeah.
There's another one coming up very soon that's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to talk about in this episode, which was also a throwaway, but I think is interesting. Liv is on Prozac now.
Mm.
Is she seeing a psych or is she just in a hospital?
Yeah, she's just in the hospital.
I thought that was really interesting. In Meadows' line earlier, or in the last episode, it was like, we're all hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this episode in particular, you can see all of the family being a little bit of a hypocrite.
Oh, yeah.
Carmela getting jealous of Tony's affair, or like calling the house, being jealous about it, while she is having kind of an emotional, not affair, but entanglement with Vic.
Well, that's just it. The entanglements that we get into in these relationships are part of what makes having consistent adherence to values so challenging. Because if you're in a relationship with somebody who isn't faithful to you, it's going to lead you to not be faithful back to that person.
Yeah.
That distrust breeds distrust. And as soon as there's a little ripple in a situation, whether it's a matter of trust or reliability, I think that's where you can start to say, okay, it's like if somebody's late for a meeting, you are going to, for the next meeting, probably not feel compelled to be on time. And now you're running late for the meeting. And these things tend to compound. And that's where I think you can get into the hypocrisy of you had a certain set of standards, but now you're in this situation with somebody else and you're learning to compromise your standards because you've seen them compromise theirs. Ross, you're writing notes on your printouts.
I'm using pen and paper. You're right. You caught me.
You're very old school. I like it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pen and paper all day long.
Boss converted me. I printed out my notes for this.
I'm
for this
pretty
episode.
impressed. Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like the most technically advanced because I'm still using my laptop for notes.
This episode ends where, is this the last we see of Janice? Tony throws her on a bus.
Yeah. On a bus.
Yeah.
Back to Seattle.
Yeah.
Back to her
I'm assuming this is not the last we see of Janice.
Would you like it to be the last time you see Janice?
I know this isn't because I've seen the last episode now. So I don't know. I think she was fun. I think in this season, maybe because of how she ended, I was like, love Janice, cannot get enough of her. Go off, girl. But I don't know. Maybe I can see her annoying potential.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And how she is so naive. She's very naive.
Yeah.
For a family of mobsters.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe my opinion will change. But right now, she's in my good graces.
Well, we'll see how much longer she stays there. This will not be the last you see of Janice.
Yeah.
As we get into the next installment of Machete Order.
Okay.
You ready?
Hit me.
All right. We're going to be looking at finishing this season.
Okay.
So that'll be episode 13 of season 2, episode 26 overall. And that is Funhouse. Interesting name. We're going to then jump, obviously, into season 3. And season 3 is considered by many the best season of The Sopranos. So
season 3,
which we're going to be heading into with this next installment.
Okay.
So it was hard because the last 3 episodes of season 3 really are must-watches for a lot of different reasons. And so it only really leaves us with a couple to get to choose from. There's a couple that I'm a big fan of. You get to know a lot of characters a little bit more, but there are 2 episodes in season 3 that are generally considered to be in the top 20 episodes of Sopranos. So we're going to stick with the chalk and go with season 3, episode 4, Employee of the Month.
Did you guys save your episode count so you can have more episodes in season 3? Or are we sticking to only 3 episodes?
We're trying to go with like 4 to 5.
Okay.
And we were pretty light on season 2. We only went with 4. But we are going to go probably with 5 here on season 3.
Sounds good.
So we're going to see episode 4, Employee of the Month. And then we're going to go to episode 6, University. Now, there's a couple of important things you need to know going into season 3, because obviously we're going to be missing some things. The first is the appearance of the new antagonist in the family, Ralph Cifaretto.
My second favorite Sopranos character.
Ralph smiled so big when he heard that name.
Played by Joe Pantalineo, Joey Pants. You probably know him from The Matrix. He played Cypher the bald evil guy.
Oh, that's interesting. That's your reference for him.
Yeah. Well, what's yours?
The Fugitive.
The Fugitive. Yeah.
I haven't seen The Fugitive.
I figured she hadn't seen The Fugitive, but
we might need to do a.
Yeah. You know what I did see?
The Godfather.
Goodfellas.
Oh,
I saw Goodfellas.
Good job.
So, thank you. You're proud of me.
What'd you think?
I forget the actor's name, but the main guy, his eyes are fucking crazy.
Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
While the movie was going, I was Googling, are those contacts? Are they real?
The eyeliner helps pop with the blues.
Was he wearing eyeliner?
Oh God, yeah.
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 It's crazy.
Does any of our discussion about Goodfellas from the first episode, does that make sense now?
It does.
Yeah.
I was listening back. Now I know what's going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you pick up on Michael Imperioli, who plays Christopher, being in Goodfellas?
I did.
Yeah.
Shot in the leg. Didn't last very long.
No.
Yeah.
Poor Spider.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
I also caught Melfi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Lorraine Bracco plays Henry Hill's wife.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of crossover in the Goodfellas universe between Sopranos and here.
What's been fun now is that I can actually see the crossover. Next time I'll watch a Godfather, not the Good Father.
The Good Father.
The Good Father. Godfather.
All right, so we're going to see Ralphie Cifaretto. He is the head of the DeMeo family, and he will appear in the show as one of the new underbosses to Tony. I think that's all we really need to tell you about Ralphie. The rest you'll kind of piece together. Well, I will say one other thing. So he is dating in episode 4. He's dating Jackie April's wife, her widow. And so there's a relationship that he has with Jackie's son. That's enough context, I think.
Okay.
Get ready for some Jackie April.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jackie Jr.
Jackie Jr.
You're also going to meet Johnny Sacks. Now, you've seen Johnny Sacks before. He's been in a lot of these other scenes, but he's got a much more minor role. His role starts to become more important in this season, and so he's an important one to pay attention to. He is part of the New York crime family, and a similar type of street boss like Tony was. That's who Johnny Sacks is, and his wife is named Ginny. You're also going to see Svetlana, and Svetlana is Rena's cousin. So Tony's mistress's cousin, who you saw.
Is she the blonde one?
Yes.
Okay.
With the prosthetic leg, who has the knight in white satin armor that carries her out of the store when her leg falls off. Yeah. So she is a more major character. She was becoming a more major character. And going into this episode, episode 4, where we go into Employee of the Month, you need to know that she's had a dispute with Janice, and Janice stole her prosthetic leg.
It does not give it back.
The rest of it.
Good for her. Good for you, Janice.
I think that's all the context you need. There is one other notable thing that I'm not going to mention here. I think we'll be better off to address it when we come back and review what you think. But there you have it. For session 4,
okay.
The next installment of Machete Order is Seasons 2 finale, episode 13, Funhouse. Season 3, episode 4, Employee of the Month. And Season 3, episode 6, University.
Okay, perfect. Next episode, I report back.
Yes.
All right.
A lot of chalk, but it's going to start to get more interesting with the episodes that we choose after we come around the bend here, which will be about, believe it or not, like kind of at the halfway point.
Already?
Yeah.
What do they say at cover band concerts? Just play the hits?
Just play the hits.
That's what we're doing here, Maxine. We're just playing the hits. That's what I at least always yell to the band. They don't pick it.
Just play the good ones.
Play the hits.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Machete Order. If you like what we're doing, give us a rating and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Be sure to subscribe.
If people don't support this thing, it might not make it.
Special thanks to Brother Sal for providing us with our theme song, I Will Tell. And thank you to producer Nicole Kemet and our guest host, Ross. Do you agree with SJ and Ross's episode picks? Am I not appreciating the story the way I should? Let us know on our Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter. We will not call it X, at Machete Order. We'll talk about it, or because this is a show about Italians, we'll argue about it.
Affangu!
Be sure to tell your friends.
Until next time, I'm SJ Pederuti.
I'm Maxine Philivong, and this has been a Rotary Studios experience.